P2P audit has, when we click this, we have all these points: vendor management, indent. This is what I was showing Mr. Ramakrishna: RFQ, tender submission, tender opening, tender scrutiny, comparison, approval, order placement, pre-dispatch inspection, receipts inspection, goods receipt, payment. Now what we will do is, we will get back and then go to the first of the thing, which is very important. In our case, we will go to the vendor management itself, right? We go to vendor management. Now in vendor management, what all we have? Let's have a look at it. We should have a vendor master. Then we should have a vendor registration system. We should have a vendor performance, vendor evaluation, and vendor rotation methodology. So these are all the things that the company should have as an auditor. This is my view, because we have been on the other side of the table for a very long time. So these are all the things which an auditor should have a look at it and see whether these kind of a system prevails in the organization or not. Like what all the vendor master should have. If the company can have a policy that presently, because we are doing GST from 2017, so it's almost 5 years plus. So some companies have the policy that without a GST registered vendor, we will not be operating with them and all. So that kind of a system, whether the vendor has got a GST registration number, vendor is having a PAN number, the vendor's bank account number, everything is there. And somebody was talking about KYC. You'll have to do a KYC of vendor, whether he has got the correct email ID, whether his phone number is correct, who is the authorized person with whom the company should deal. There are umpteen number of things out there, right? Can somebody add some other points than what we have been discussing? I've been telling some other points. Yeah. Somebody can do that, please. Vendor master. We will discuss.
So the vendor is a manufacturer or retailer. That's also one point.
Yeah, vendor is a retailer. Yeah, true. Then
manufacturer.
Manufacturer, agreed. Then
and whether he is a MSME vendor or other than MSME vendor.
Yes.
Yeah, true, true. That is very, very important.
Important. Yes.
Why that this one is needed, MSME, or why it is needed?
Because in the balance sheet, we need to disclose the payables. Anything is pending for MSME vendors.
Not a particular period, you know.
One risk is there when payment is delayed to the MSME vendors, we should pay the penal interest.
Yeah. So when we have a vendor master, then when we go for an internal audit, we will have to find out if the company has faltered anything on MSME vendors beyond the statutory limits, isn't it?
Correct.
It becomes, and why it is not only an audit point, why it becomes important as a, suppose we are a cost accountant also, no? So why it is important as a CMA, leave alone the audit point, why it is important? Okay, company has delayed 50 days, it has taken instead of X number of days, whatever is the thing, right? So how does it matter? Company is doing a lot of profit. Oh, okay, 5,000, 10,000 rupees penalty. So what? In what way you are considered as a CM? What is the important aspect on this thing? It hits the bottom line. Am I right or wrong? Any penalty? Yes or no, please?
Yes.
It's an avoidable expenditure. Am I right?
Expenditure.
Yes, sir.
So more than, okay, any auditor should see, but if a CMA is going to do the audit, more than anything, you should look at those angles which is going to hit the bottom line. Okay, some of the expenditure may not form part of the cost or whatever it is. That's a separate story altogether that we can discuss on some other topic. But as an auditor, when you are going to do this kind of a job, and especially if you are a CMA, because our whole job is to ensure that the company spends Optimum amount. I'm not talking of a lesser amount. I'm talking of optimum amount and then producing the maximum good quality material or good quality service. So if there is going to be an MSME vendor and there is a particular statute available within this particular framework, you'll have to make the payment and then we delay the payment. That means we are just losing money. So as a cost and management accountant or any professionally, finance professional, whatever you are, you can be an MBA, finance, CA, CMA, whatever it is, then it's our job, not even as an auditor, even as a person who has to look at the cost and who has to look at the bottom line, we are supposed to find out and then not only telling the management as to, yeah, you have made the payment or you shouldn't have done it. We are supposed to come out, if possible, with a robust solution so that it does not repeat. Am I telling the correct thing or not? Or my job ends only by just pointing out that you have made a mistake. That anybody can do. But if you are able to give a robust solution to them, then you do a value addition. Then you are most respected person for the organization. Yes or no, please?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That is the reason they are suggesting in vendor master itself, they put this MSME so that we can retrieve the MSME. The due dates also we can put 45 days due date. It will reflect, it will pop up, and to avoid the penalty.
Yeah, we must, as Mr. Ramakrishna says, we must ensure that I think Mr. Naresh and others will agree, when we develop a system, then the system should give lot of pop-ups and pop-ups saying that your time is running out, so you have to make a payment and all. Because there is no point in the system telling that you have made a mistake. The system is supposed to ensure that you don't make a mistake. We will have to ensure that when we go for an audit, we should also find out what kind of a system interventions is available, system messages are available to the auditee so that he never makes a mistake. This is a very, very important one. Thank you, all of you. Yeah, so vendor master has got a lot of things because what should be available in the vendor master itself is a 1.5 hour discussion when we get into that. So these are all the minimum requirement that we should have. And then as he was telling, KYC is very, very important. They cannot simply give away any, GST number and get away. What is the, suppose there is a vendor available, let's say he's a sort of a proprietor or a single company and all. So how do we verify the GST, whether what he gives is the right or wrong? And is there any correlation between GST and PAN number and all? Is it there? Can somebody throw some light on that, please?
Sir, there is a link between PAN and GST. Generally, what we do, whenever a new vendor is opened, we can check with Google, like Google, we can go and check whether this GST or PAN number is correct or not. It is reflecting us. That is way we can check generally. That is one way, and later only we will create a code.
Okay, so as an auditor, we will have to find out what does the auditing company has got a system of KYC. Am I right? Because this is, if there is going to be a flaw in their system, then this is going to have a big tamasha at a later date, right? And many other points which we are supposed to check with the vendor, and if he is going to give a MSME certificate, then we will have to find out what is the validity of the certificate and whether the vendor is after every 2 years or 3 years, whether he is again giving a certificate or once, said 10 years back, we got a certificate and then the company is sleeping on that. That should not happen, right? That is not the right way of working on it. I think
Sir, apart from local vendors, there will be foreign vendors also. So that is also important.
Yeah, foreign vendor imported for
currency.
items. Yeah, foreign vendors you will have. So they have a different set of data and all which we are supposed to check up and then do that, right? Thank you. Now we come to vendor registration system. What is this actually? Vendor registration. See, in fact, it should be the vendor registration, then it should be the vendor master, whatever it is. So vendor registration. So what do? We have a, how do you register a vendor? Yeah, Chiranjeev. Whoever comes, we register, or we will have some sort of a checkpoints and all we will do, or what? How do we do in an organization? When we go for audit, what are we supposed to see on vendor registration system? Any Tom, Dick and Harry, if the company starts registering, is it the right way of approach or it's not the correct way of approach? Any idea?
Their experience in the market, their financial strengths, and their quality products, all these things will be considered while we register the tax. So there is a separate
A lot
vendor.
of, yeah, we have Mr. Vadivel joining. He's a pillar for these kind of workshops for the past 20 months, what we are doing. Thanks Vadivel for joining. Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
And yeah, good evening, Vadivel. We were discussing, we just started on vendor management. We finished vendor master. Now we come to vendor registration system. So vendor registration system should be a robust system, as Mr. Srinivas was telling. So we should have, yeah, Mr. Vadivel, you want to say something?
Yeah, see, actually, you have identified a correct point in this forum, vendor registration system. Since most of the companies, when they are going to have vendor registration form, they supposed to cross-verify with GST as well. Most of the suppliers, they do not file their GST return properly, and they are getting new business with a new client. Once the customer receive the material from the new vendor, they never pay the money to GST department, they vanish. So the problem is with the client now. They do not have the option to claim this amount from the supplier. So the accounts department in the companies, if it is perfect, then vendor registration system should be proper.
Like input tax, we will not get input tax. Company will not.
See, the idea, as Mr. Vadivel and Ramakrishna is telling, we will see earlier the system was different. You are able to take the credit. Now ITC you cannot take unless, as Mr. Vadivel says, if he doesn't pay, then you can't take it. Then your profitability gets a hit. So it is very, very important when we register a vendor himself, it's very important in case if he's a reputed vendor, normally we don't get these kind of things, but then we should have our own system of verification of the credibility of the vendor when we take him into the system of our procurement. Vendor registration, there are hundreds of things. Sometimes we may have to go and look at the facilities of, if suppose the vendor is a manufacturer, so we should go and find out what kind of a manufacturing facility he has, whether suppose you want only an ISO certified vendor, whether he has got that kind of a certificate or any other certification you want, child labor, umpteen number of things that we are supposed to check before we register a vendor. So all those things we should ensure that we keep it in a proper forum, and then we are able to check every now and then all the things. That is how we should work. Any other point on vendor registration?
So in the direct tax also there is a problem. Suppose if the customer, I mean the supplier is not filed their income tax return past 2 to 3 years, they supposed to be deducted with a higher income tax, TDS.
Okay. How does that matter for us, Mr. Vadivel?
Yeah, see, actually, at the time of registration itself, if we collected all the documents, so the particular company is having all the vendors are good vendors only in their system. In all the angles, all the compliance angle, maybe direct tax or indirect tax. Direct tax, if they have not filed past 2 years income tax return, the company supposed to deduct higher TDS. This is one of the rules introduced in the direct tax in the last year.
True.
So basically specified person, that is called specified person.
Yeah, specified person. So in the all the checklists, if you include in the vendor registration itself, then it must be a robust system for the company.
Yeah, now what, since this is a topic on as an auditor, what we should do. So if anybody is doing internal audit, please ensure, note down these points, and then you should be able to do a better job in contribution to the company. That is our request. The idea is now we are having a lot of ideas, pooling of ideas. Mr. Vadivel is a good auditor, and Ramakrishna and others, and people are working in the system. So that is why we are now getting this direct tax compliance also is a very, very important point. GST compliance is another important point. Because yeah, please.
For example, sir, if it is a specified person, what Vadivel is saying correctly, the rate will be twice the rate, prescribed the rate. So suppose if we are not aware of this person is specified person, we will deduct normal only. Suppose service vendor, we will deduct normal rate only. Instead of we have to deduct double the rate of the prescribed rate.
Double the rate. So we also become a defaulter on compliance, isn't it?
Correct.
So income tax department will pull our leg also. So we should be very, 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 very cautious on vendor registration system. So this is a very good point. Thank you very much. Any other point that we should take into? Sir, please tell me something.
In vendor registration also to avoid duplicacy, sir. That system should.
Pardon me, vendor registration?
No, duplicacy. Same vendor double time.
That system duplicate we can now. Previously, it was difficult for us to remove. Now, duplicate we are able to remove through PAN numbers and GST numbers, and now we are able to remove to a large extent. I'm not telling 100%, but a very large extent we will be able to remove duplicates.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Now, I was asking a question on bank account number, bank details of the vendor. Does it have any bearing on audit?
Yes, sir. Definitely. Suppose sometimes people will not give the account number reflecting the name of the invoice. So they will give personal. So that is wrong actually. Whatever the name is there on the invoice, we should pay similar account, current account, whatever the supplier having. We should pay to them.
We will see. This we will see when we discuss payments, Mr. Ramakrishna. On the vendor registration.
No. While registration itself, bank details is must. So we should update the bank.
I agree with you. Bank details is must. Once I register, then I start doing the job in his vendor master, isn't it? First I do a vendor registration, then I convert it into a vendor master.
Correct.
Now, what does suppose what happens if the vendor, there is a bank account number in the vendor master based on the vendor registration system. Some vendors have got the habit of changing their bank account number for each and every invoice. Am I right? They will say next invoice. They will not give the bank account number in the invoice because your vendor is registered. So they may change the bank account. So as an auditor, we can also find out whether any vendor is having the habit of changing his bank account number very frequently. See, even once we should not allow normally, because then the vendor is not a very compliant vendor, then we should not deal with him, because he would have taken loan from A bank, then he would have, when he gave the vendor registration, then he must be defaulting the loan, so he would have changed it into B bank. So a defaulting fellow we should not be going on be encouraging. So we have seen all these things even with the employees. Whenever we have been crediting their salary into the banks, they would have taken scooter loan from one place, furniture loan from the second bank, third bank, then they will go on with juggling. So we normally get an NOC. So what is my suggestion is, whether the company is having the system of whenever they want to change the bank account, the vendors, whether the company should get an NOC he should submit an NOC from the previous bank. Is that system correct, or we should not be worried as an auditor or a consultant about this? What is your viewpoints, all of you? Should we allow the vendor to go on be changing his bank account number in the vendor master every time? Is it a correct way of doing it?
No.
My job is also increasing, isn't it? So what should we do as an auditor? What kind of a system we should suggest, or we should look at it? That is my question. Yeah, please.
Sir, minimum number of accounts. Actually, 1 or 2 accounts, okay, we can allow, but not oftenly.
In the master, he should have only one account. He cannot have dual account within the master itself. I think
Correct, sir.
people who are working in the ERP environment, they will be able to tell, because we can't have either or bank. You have only one bank account. My only question is, if we goes on changing the bank account, should we entertain in an organization? That is what I am asking, because
No,
that
sir, we should not.
puts a load on us also. No.
Yes, yes, yes.
There is a vendor master team, so that team has to work, change all these things. So we should not allow it. So as an person who is going to do an audit, we should look at this angle also. That is what I am suggesting. Yes. Okay, fine. What is vendor performance? And it is connected with the vendor evaluation also. What is vendor performance and evaluation? Yeah, can we discuss that point? Vendor performance. What is vendor performance? What is vendor evaluation? Why we should look at as an auditor, whether the company has got a vendor evaluation system itself, we are supposed to look at it, isn't it? A vendor evaluation system should be there, which should be based on the vendor performance. Yeah. What is meant by vendor evaluation and what is meant by vendor performance? How are we going to do an audit on that subject? Yes. Can somebody throw light on that?
Performance generally related to the timely supply and quality of the products they supply to you.
Okay, timelines, quality
of the products.
quantity,
Quantity,
then
Price also.
price. Price I think is a contractual price, normally. So okay, that also we should look into it. Okay, then quality, timeliness, or then in case the quality is not only the material quality. I think
replacement.
the quality includes the way in which it has been packed, transported, shipped, delivered at your place, isn't it? It's everything we'll have to look at it. Okay, he had sent it properly. The packaging is not all right. So we will have to look at the vendor performance based on quality, quantity, time, price, all those things, and after sale service, isn't it? Many of the products may require after sale service. So all those things put together, you have got a vendor performance, and based on that, a vendor evaluation is to be done. So we will have to find out whether the organization has got a system of vendor performance and vendor evaluation, because that is very, very important. We will have to find out if a particular vendor is not good after evaluation, whether the organization is continuously placing orders on him. That means there are some vested interests within the organization which are doing this, and then we'll have to bring out this point to the management. Yes or no?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So any other point in the vendor evaluation which we are supposed to look at?
Basically, evaluation means comparing with two vendors and giving the rankings in terms of quality and quantity, like timeliness.
And please understand, as Mr. Vadivel and others were telling, vendor performance will include vendor's performance on tax and other statutory compliance with the government authorities. Am I right?
Yes, sir.
Suppose he is a GST registered vendor, and then you are procured from him, you are paid the GST to him, and he is not paying the GST to the authorities. That means you are not able to take the ITC, then you are in fix the particular period up to which only you can do that. So vendor performance comes on many things, based on the way he is compliant with all other rules and regulations, and quality, quantity, timeliness, after sales service. And if it is going to be an industry where child labor is going to be more, and then you are giving a certificate to your customers saying that you are being compliant with so many things, that means your vendor also should be compliant on all those things. So your vendor's performance starts based on your certificate to your customers. So we'll have to ensure all those things. Now, we will have to find out from your client organization whether all these kind of things are being done by them or not. If it is not being done, then as an auditor, you are supposed to give your suggestion as to what all they should do, so that you can also breathe easy and your client also will breathe easy, right? Any other point which we have missed out on this vendor performance and evaluation? Any other? Anyone else?
This process has to be repeated for once in every 3 years. So most of
Pardon me,
people
this process is to be
repeated, the evaluation process to be repeated once in 3 years kind of thing.
see
So
if
what companies will do is they will do once for all, and they will not relocate that.
so it must be it is a continuing process. Yeah, if you, as you rightly said, it's a continuing process. After every purchase, maybe we will have to, your system should ensure that it gives points to all these things. Like in an SAP, it becomes very, very easy, isn't it? There is a purchase order, then the GRN is available. You know what is the expected date of delivery. So if the delivery is happening within the timeline, it should give, suppose within the timeline, it can give 10 points. If it is 1 day delay, it can give 9 points. Some such thing point system you can have. And then based on the quality also, if 100 units are delivered and all the 100 are found to be okay, then he gets 10 out of 10. So these are all easily done through a computerized system or an SAP system. Our when a supplier relationship management, SRM and SRM 7 or whatever it is, or FLM, file lifecycle management, we can add all those things and then we can push the data into the vendor evaluation system. So otherwise, we'll have to tell the clients that your system, computerized system, should take care of all these things instead of somebody manually doing it. Because manually doing, we forget. Sometimes we will forget. So this should be a system driven and human being independent job. It should be done. That is how the system should work. So these days, many of the big companies, they have gone into some sort of an ERP, maybe SAP or may not be SAP or anything, but then they should be able to do. Even small companies, they give a lot of things on this vendor evaluation, vendor performance and all. It's a continuous. For every purchase, the data should be updated. Or every failure, the data should be updated. Every success, data should be updated. That is all. I agree with you. It should not be a once I have done, I'm very happy. No, not that. Every procurement action, it should be done. Even vendor performance talks about you are given an RFQ request for quotation. You had asked. You are given, let's say, 21 days for people to respond. Some vendors habitually they ask for extension of time. So we'll have to find out. We will have to put it in the vendor performance that this man is always asking for more time and then jeopardizing the whole process. Public, private, you can simply ignore. In public, there are some issues. We cannot ignore the vendor so easily. So he will say vested interest, this, that, and also we will have to look at it. If somebody is going on delaying the process, we should give him a negative mark. And then finally, you don't take him into account. See, if your system is going to be foolproof and completely documented, nobody is going to raise a finger on your system or on the officials in the organization. So we should ensure that the system works rather than individuals work. That is what. Now, what is meant by this vendor rotation methodology? Why an auditor should be worried about it? First of all, can somebody explain to me what is meant by vendor rotation?
Vendor, because we can get by doing the rotation of the vendor, we can get good quality and we cannot monopoly to do. The vendor cannot be dictate us actually. And also giving one vendor always purchase orders, it is also not good for the company. So we have to look after change over the vendors.
But if the vendor gives a good quality at a correct price, then what is the point in changing? Why should I change?
Correct quality, then okay. But dependency will be there. So correct quality they will give, price also they will give, but no, the dependency will be there.
To avoid collision between the purchase department and the vendor.
Yeah, Shastri, you are telling the right thing. One is to
Yeah.
avoid the nexus between.
We did this, sir, in one of the companies I worked. My managing director is to say that don't go to the same vendor. If there is an alternative available, go explore the other vendor, even though this vendor is very good, in order to avoid purchase department and the vendor collusion.
True. Thank you.
Second thing is on the advertising side where I work, there will not be any choice. Like the advertiser will say, I want only so and so to be my cameraman. I need to take that cameraman alone, even though there is an alternative available to me, and he or she may be a better cameraman. In advertising, I saw when I want to do this vendor evaluation, 3 quotations, etc. I used to go with the advertiser because ultimately advertiser is paying. Where I do not, even though I want to do that, I want so and so as my cameraman, or a production unit should be this much. I had no choice but to go with them. So there's no, even though there's a
It
choice.
happens, in a creative field, it happens.
Yeah.
Okay. They say it's a creativity, you cannot dictate terms with me. That's what they will say. Okay.
Correct.
It happens even when you hire halls, sometimes. Yeah. When you want to have your own caterers, the hall may not allow. They will say, no, you should only use my caterer, my decorator, okay, my electricians, some such thing,
Yeah.
So they make money, but then still, as we'll have to find out whether the company has got a vendor rotation policy itself. Is there any methodology, policy is available? Because in a public sector, all of you must be knowing, whoever is working in a public sector, we need a policy on vendor rotation, especially when we go for a limited tender inquiry. Suppose I got a limited tender inquiry and I have got, let's say, about 20, 25 or 100 registered vendors, and then I want to give to 20 vendors for this time. So next time I'm supposed to give another set of 20 vendors. So I should have a policy. When I go to the next time, whoever was the successful tenderer in the previous tender, he should be definitely given a chance, because he will again come and participate. But then I should select some other new vendors from my bucket. My bucket will have a lot of registered vendors. So I am supposed to rotate the vendors so that as a state, as a public sector undertaking, we are answerable to the public, and then we should definitely have a rotational policy of vendors so that we give equal chance to all vendors who are registered. I'm not talking of unregistered vendors. Within the registered vendor, we should have a rotation policy. Suppose you are going for an internal audit of a public sector undertaking, then we should find out whether they have got a rotation policy, because this is in the public procurement policy system itself. It is all written. So we should now first go through and read that policy of the government, public procurement policy we are supposed to read. And many times the individual organization, private or public, big organization, they have got their own purchase and contract procedures, policy procedures. So as an auditor, our first and foremost job, see, these are all the system, but how as an auditor, we are supposed to get ready. We are supposed to go through their complete policy documents. We are supposed to study, make notes. And then somebody was talking of DOP, delegation of powers. We are supposed to go through, make notes. And then if you have a standard operating procedure, we are supposed to get hold of that and then take notes and then start our audit. Suppose in the public policy, there is no vendor rotation in a public sector undertaking, then we are supposed to definitely point out by this is not as per the government policy. You don't have this policy at all. You should introduce. That is what we should give the value addition points. This is what some of the points. Any other points?
Sir, sometimes vendor rotation is sometimes also not possible in case of OEM manufacturer, original equipment manufacturers.
That is what I said. No. If you are, when you are going for an LT, I'm talking, we will come to that when we go for RFQ, what kind of a thing, maybe another 2 points later. When you go for OEM, your choices are quite limited, isn't it? You go only for the original equipment manufacturer. Then where is the question of rotation of vendor? It's not going to happen. But as Mr. Sastry was telling, even in case of OEMs, once we are supposed to find out whether we have alternate source for getting the spares and work on it, if it is possible. That also we are supposed to do. If you go through the public procurement policy, then you will have a lot of points coming out on that. I fully agree with you. With OEM, it is not possible. But when you are going for a change of suppliers on some of the spares and all, we are supposed to have a rotational policy also. And off the shelf, we have so many suppliers. So we should have a rotation policy with the supplier. Whether we have that kind of a policy, and if it is so, what is the methodology? That is what we are supposed to look into it. This is what. Mr. Vadivel, you came on the line. You wanted to say something?
No, I was thought of telling a SOB.
We were discussing about it in the standard operating procedure, like DOP, SOP also, we are supposed to study as an auditor before we start our audit. See, when we go for an audit, I think we are supposed to do a lot of homework before we get into the audit per se. I fully agree with you. See, these are all the things which we were discussing on vendor management, like vendor registration, vendor master, vendor performance, vendor evaluation, vendor rotation methodology. Friends, all of you must be knowing the subject is definitely quite interesting, and it cannot be done in a single sitting. And we are not doing any classroom saying that we will do all the whole subject for 1.5 hours or 2 hours. No. So Vadivel and we are doing it for the past 20 months on various subjects. Some of you must be attending the other subjects, and there is we record and then put it on the YouTube so that people who have missed, they can also see this. And if you really look at it for today, this one, we have another 22 minutes to go. Now we have completed only one portion out of this 1.5 hours, right? Now what I suggest is we will be discussing, we will close exactly at 4:35 because that is how we always plan. And then we continue on the next session, maybe next Sunday or Sunday after next, whenever it is there. And people who are continuing the journey, it will be very nice of you to be with us so that we'll be able to mutually learn from each of us, right? Here I am not discussing material which we will discuss maybe in the subsequent this one. Like, shall we proceed, or any other point you want to add before we go to the indent portion? This is what we did this so far. Yeah.
One thing I just want to share, sir, is on SOP. Many of the companies SOP are not updated. That's what I've seen. They were created, but not updated to the
They
actual.
wouldn't have updated. Yeah, true.
Yeah.
So
many of the companies I observed that and told them to update it so that the reality what we are seeing versus SOP are matching. They may be having a advanced way of doing the work, but it is not reflected in the SOP. Documentation is also important. That's what
important. Yeah, we will have to tell as an auditor, ensure that they do also, apart from telling. Yes,
yeah.
That is. Thank you very much. Any other thing on vendor?
What Tata Sastry is telling is 100% correct. When I was in Motherson, the internal auditor was KPMG. They used to identify the current SOP. They used to tell lot of points. This was not updated. This was not updated. Then we have changed a lot of internal policy, and accordingly we have released once again.
Yeah, we are supposed to do. See, all these policy documents, fine tuning. We will be issuing many circulars and all. So everything has to be done, and then they have to be again updated. I can give my experience. Maybe next session I'll show you the documents also, some of them. We came out after many years. We came out with I was one of the task force member in Steel Authority. We came out with the PCP, Purchase Contract Procedure 2006. Then we updated it with 2009. Then we updated 2012. We updated 2014. We updated 2017. We updated 2020. We are now updating still. Okay. So every time we bring out a new booklet, okay, you are not changing the whole system, but as we grow, as we change, as the statutory things as the statutory things, they go on be changing. We are supposed to take care of all those things which are changing and then putting it into practice and then update the document. Why material? We will not update accounts manual, we will not update costing manual, we will not update internal audit manual, we will not update personnel manual, we will not update materials management manual. Hundreds of manuals we are supposed to do. As an internal auditor, I am only talking of P2P. So as an internal auditor, if you really look at it, we will have to update so many things. We are supposed to tell the organization by you will have to take care of all these things. Otherwise, you will be left out, because a newcomer, anybody steps into the organization, what he will understand? He's not going to understand. He only understand based on the manuals which he is going to read. And as an auditor also, you also depend on the manual, isn't it? So how are you going to do an audit? There is a manual and there is an action. So we will be checking whether the action is according to the manual. There is an SOP, there is a DOP. If DOP is 25 years old, and then what kind of a DOP it is? It is as good as it is not there. So fully agreed with your point. Thank you very much. Any other thing on vendor management, or can we go to the next subject?
Yes, sir, we can.
We have what we will do, we will try to complete intern and then close the session, even if it exceeds 5-10 minutes. Will it be all right, or should we stop the session at this point?
It is okay, sir. It is okay.
Okay, we will go up to indent and then we will close it. Okay, thank you. Hold on.